Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forms. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with its authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome to Writer's Corner. Once again, Alan Miller with you, and our guest today, and he's been on the show once before, but not individually, Rob Jung. Now, Rob Jung is really not Rob Jung. That's a pen name.
It is.
So why don't you tell us that story?
Okay, my real name is Robert William Junghans, and the Junghans is spelled Junghans. And I always tell people that I couldn't spell it until I was 12, so when I started writing books, I decided to shorten it up so it would be easier to read, and now I wish I'd never done that.
Now, the interesting thing about Rob Jung, who's also called Bob by some people, is called Robert by some people.
There are other things that I'm called by some people too, but we'll skip those.
I use the Rob. He is a Harvard-educated lawyer. He was born not in Minnesota, but in
Petaluma, California.
And then moved to
the Midwest, to Minnesota, a small town, Winona, Minnesota, when I was young and didn't have the ability to object.
And then ultimately the University of Minnesota?
No, actually, I was a newspaper writer, and I hopscotched all over the state of Minnesota, getting my undergraduate degree in the process. It took me 7 years to get a bachelor's degree.
And then to Harvard Law School.
And then to Harvard Law School.
Now you are the entrepreneur of I don't know how many things. Minnesota Mystery Night.
Minnesota Mystery Night, yep.
You are involved with the Loft Literary Center.
I'm a member of the Loft, yes. I've taken classes there.
You have a group of 5 writers who are called
Midwest Mystery Works.
Midwest Mystery Works. And in fact, I think the other 4 have actually been on this show at various times.
I think they all have to as well. So.
And your most recent book, which is now coming out in an audio book, is?
Well, the book that's coming out in audio about December 10th, I think, is called The Reaper, which is the first book of a trilogy.
And as a matter of fact, we have all 3 books of the trilogy.
We
right
do,
here.
and the cover of The Reaper, I think, is the one that is facing outward so that viewers can see it. The other 2, you can just see the spine. But The Reaper is a story that arises out of a missing painting. The painting is technically called, or is called El Segador, which is a Catalan term that translates to the reaper or the farmer. And the painting disappeared, and this is historically accurate. And I used that as the foundation for a book that started out as a standalone and ended up being a trilogy.
And the trilogy is now complete.
It is. The latest of the trilogy was Judgment Day, and that came out in March, I believe, of this year.
But writing is not the only thing you do. You are a raconteur. You are a wine aficionado. You are a grandfather and a great-grandfather.
I am all of that.
You are so many different things.
Well, I've been blessed to lead a very interesting and eclectic life.
You're also a book producer.
Yes, I did. I've published other people's books, and I've written my own. And the latest project that is almost there now is we've taken Minnesota Mystery Night, which is a live monthly event, and we have parlayed it into a radio show. I realize that's the wrong media for what we're for today, but I think all things being equal, we will have our first radio broadcast in January of next year.
Now, actually, Minnesota Mystery Night has been going for about 3 years.
Yeah, we're into our third year. Yeah,
it was held at Axel's restaurant in Mendota, and suddenly, without notice, Axel's closed.
Yes, we got notice of that. We'd been there for 2 years, very successful 2-year run, and we were quite happy there. And then one day, I got an email from a friend, a person who comes to Minnesota Mystery Night regularly, that said, "Do you know that Axel's is closing?" And I did not know that Axel's was closing. Nobody had notified me of that, and within 2 weeks they were closed, and we were out of a place to hold Minnesota Mystery Night.
So you scrounged around like crazy, and I know this because I was part of it for really over a month.
Yeah, we scrambled looking for a...
And you only missed one show.
That's true.
And then you opened again.
We opened in November 18th at Lucky's 13 Pub in Mendota.
You could practically throw stones from Lucky's 13
practically
to where Axel's was located.
It's about a football field length distance between the two places, and if not for my wife, we probably would have never have gone there. But we were leaving Axel's after on the day they actually closed, because we had to pick some stuff up that we had there. And as we drove out, she said, "Why don't we stop here and look?" And I had stuck my head in there once before when we first were looking for space, and it didn't seem like a place that would fit. But we did. We stopped, and lo and behold, it turned out to be a great spot, and we were really happy with it.
And you kicked off this past Monday night.
This past Monday night with really, really good guest authors. Oh, that's right. You were one.
One out of two, anyway.
One out of two, anyway.
Was a good guest author.
You and
Michael Farrisee
Michael Farrisee
is a very good author.
Michael.
I was there for comic relief.
No, well, you who knew you were such a comedian, Alan? It was a great night all the way around.
My earlier life.
Well, I think the thing that astounded me most of the whole evening was to realize that Michael Farrisee has written 81 books.
Unbelievable.
How do you do that?
Unbelievable.
I mean, that's one book for every one of the years I've been here.
Okay, next month, one of our two guests, in addition to, I'm trying to think, but Alan Eskins, he's written a fleet of books.
Alan is probably he's about a dozen, I think, somewhere in there.
Easily.
Yeah, easily.
And he's going to be here next month with Brian Luderman.
Oh, great! Brian is one of the members of the Midwest Mystery Works.
Right.
And he and I and the other three members are cooperatively writing a single book, which has really been an adventure, been a lot of fun.
That certainly has to be.
And the name of the book, for working purposes, is called Fivefold. And I should explain, if you'll allow me, the rather odd-looking bookends that I have right here. This, as you can tell, I think, is a high heel. And I happened to be in Galena, Illinois a few weeks ago researching a book, and ran across these at a thrift store. That's another story. But I bought them because the first line of the book that we are jointly doing together, this Fivefold book, is "Who in the hell wears 5-inch spikes in a snowstorm?"
Here's the 5-inch
There's the
spikes.
5-inch spikes. So I thought,
fortunately, we don't have a snowstorm at the moment.
Thank gosh. Thank goodness for that. Yes, indeed.
Well, how do 5 people get together to write a book?
Brian, it was his idea, and he is the ultimate decider. if there's ever a dispute. But remarkably, we're almost done with the first draft. We've been working on it for roughly a year. And remarkably, there have been really no ego issues among any of the 5 writers. I think I can safely say that. And if there is some sort of debate about a plot point or the direction of a part of the story or where a scene should fit or something like that, ultimately we have all agreed that Brian has the final say.
Is it a mystery, a thriller? What is it?
It is a thriller. It revolves around medical implants and the ability to manipulate them remotely. And that's kind of the thread that runs through this. And
Sharon, are you listening?
if you have an implant, this book may not allow you to sleep for a few nights. But that's the thread, and it has to do with corporate espionage and blackmail and other sundry things that people who want greed or are greedy and want power.
So you came up with a concept, and it also required a lot of research. Who did the research?
Well, luckily, John Baird Rogers, one of the other of the 5 of us, is a techie by occupation, owns several technological companies and has a great deal of knowledge about it. And as does Julie Holmes. She has, not because she was a techie in the sense that Julie, before she became an author, was an airline mechanic, one of the few female airline mechanics in the country, and knows a lot about electronics and things like that. So I didn't have to do hardly any research at all. We each took a character from one of our other books or a series of our other books and incorporated them into this. So we have 5 characters, one from each author, who collaborate on this thing, and I have the only villain.
You had the only villain.
I have the only villain. So the other people wrote good people.
Now, are you writing individual chapters? Are you coordinating on the chapters? How does that work?
We're writing individual scenes, and then they are sort of put together like a jigsaw puzzle. So any given chapter, there might be scenes from all 5 of us, hypothetically, or more than likely, maybe there'll be the scene will have writings by 3 different authors in it, and it will have 3. We'll switch points of view in the course of the scene. So it's been quite interesting. I always think about it. We don't, nobody knows how it's going to end up in terms of what it's going to feel like when you read the final product.
When do you think that's going to be?
Realistically, I would think the book would be ready to, be made public sometime middle to the 3/4 mark of next year. We'll get the first draft done. We'll do a thorough critique and rewrite of that, and that probably will take us into the spring, and then we'll turn it over to an editor and have them tell us how badly we have to rewrite it again. But I keep thinking, remember, Alan, when they had years ago, they used to take the prettiest nose and the prettiest eyes and the shape of the face, and they take all those and put them all together, and the result was somebody that was really ugly. Yeah. I have a fear that that's what this book is going to be. We're going to take all these really neat things that we have, we're going to put them all together, but as a conglomerate, they don't fit really well. So.
I don't know. You got 5 really accomplished writers, and I don't see that's what's going to happen.
We hope not. We certainly hope not. That's always been running through my brain that sometimes the five prettiest things together don't always make the prettiest result.
And are you going to publish it? You going to be the publisher?
I don't think so. I think that we are going to go out and find another publisher, and we don't know who that is yet. have some ideas, but we haven't had a consensus on where we're going to go with it. Each of us do our own publishing or have our own publisher, and so we'll see. We're a little premature on that decision yet. So.
Interesting, though. It's certainly an ambitious undertaking.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it is a lot of fun. But like anything in our lives, trying to carve out enough time to focus on it and do a good job.
Especially your life. You also put out a monthly newsletter.
Oh yeah. A monthly newsletter I really enjoy putting out. It's called The View from Middle Spunk Creek. It's my sort of tongue-in-cheek look at the world and what's going on, and some of it's a little nostalgia, and some of it's every once in a while I'll throw in a recipe because I'm also a gourmet cook. And
or something comedic.
Something I try to look for something comedic always. I think, like you, I think it would. One of the things that helps you get through life is to look at it from a comedic viewpoint, because sometimes if you don't look at it that way, you'll end up in tears.
That's true. That's true. So true.
I try to find the humor in most things. So.
Now, you're also a member of Sisters in Crime.
That's true. Yep. They are one of our sponsors.
A national organization, and there's a local affiliate here in Minnesota.
I am a member of two local Sisters in Crime affiliates, one here in Minnesota and one in the Hudson River Valley in New York, which is an interesting story in of itself.
Well,
so I got a bunch of books returned from the publisher, and I made them available through my newsletter to book clubs. And I just said, I'll send you 10 free books for your book clubs if you want to feature this book. It was The Reaper, actually. And how they got a hold of my newsletter, I have no idea, but somebody from a book club called the Mavens of Mayhem, I think they're called, got in touch with me and said, yeah, we'd like to do it. And they're all made up of members of that Sisters in Crime chapter out in the Hudson River Valley. So I became a member. And
now explain how you are a member of Sisters in Crime.
Oh, well, Sisters in Crime originally was an all-female organization.
Disclosure, I am also a member.
Yeah. Now it's co-ed. And I don't know the history behind why they finally let us in, and whether they regret it or whether they don't. But it's called Sisters in Crime. It is no longer just sisters. It is brothers and sisters in crime now.
And it's a very active writing organization.
It is. It's an organization of both writers and fans. So some people that are members of that are just readers of mysteries. We meet monthly, and we did it by Zoom during COVID. We do it hybrid now, where you can attend either in person or through Zoom. We have a featured author, and we bring in a featured speaker, and there's a lot of trading of ideas, and you know what it's like. It's been there, but it's an interesting organization.
These are ideas that just take off.
Yeah, and it's good.
As is Writer's Corner.
Oh, sure.
It was an idea really brought about because of my association with you and Minnesota Mystery Night, and here we are.
Yeah.
Almost 2 years later.
I think it's been a great synergistic concept that has worked on many formats, and
we've had great feedback
on
this one.
Went from live to TV, or a live event to television, now to radio, and I've been questioned about podcasts, and my reaction to that is that's really a very nice idea, but I've been to 2 seminars about podcasts and walked out of both of them at the end thinking they're way too much work. So I don't know if I'll ever do one or not.
Well, the trick is to get a good crew, which is what we have here, a good location, state of the art.
Yep.
I mean, just look at the books we've accumulated.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Well,
there you go.
maybe someday, but that's off in the future. My next project is to try to get independent authors a little better exposure. That's actually the reason that Minnesota Mystery Night came about. The whole idea was behind it was to help give a venue for Minnesota mystery authors, and now it's become Midwest mystery authors, to introduce themselves and their work to more people. That's why the radio thing is rolling out. But I'm in the because of Axel's closing and that took a bunch of time. I had to put it on the back burner for now. But my 2025 project is to develop an electronic catalog. I'm going to start with 240 authors that will be featured. The authors and their books will be featured in the catalog, and they will be distributed to the 325 independent bookstores in the Midwest and the 7,000 libraries in the Midwest.
Which is a big undertaking.
Yeah, to get it in front of, 7,500 book buyers who then buy so that the book readers can.
People are reading books again.
I think so.
Really. I think it's picked up. And also, there is a movement out there, a large national movement to censor our books, to ban our books.
Yeah, where's your most recent one that just was released actually at Minnesota Mystery Night on Monday? If that hasn't been mentioned before on your show, it needs to. It's called Firefight in Shelter Rock.
Actually, it hasn't been mentioned on this show before.
Really? Well, Alan.
We're going to do a show on it.
Yeah, but the thread of the whole story is about censorship and book banning. And it is a really sensitive, hot topic. And it's one that seems to recur about every, 3-4 decades?
And, it's fictionalized real events.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of research. But the fact of the matter is, the sad fact of the matter is, that everything in there is based on something that has happened in this nation. As people try to take our choices of what we read or what our children avail themselves of and censor it based on their particular prejudices, bigotry, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's of great concern to me, which is what stimulated that book.
I think it's an awesome subject matter, and I think anybody who has any concern or thoughts about that should pick up your book and read it. I think it is a thought-provoking and thought-inspiring book, and it's a subject matter that needs to be brought out in the open. It brings up a really interesting point, I think, Alan, that you and I have chatted about before on other occasions. Using fiction to talk about social issues is a very effective way to get people to think about them without making people defensive, because it's a fictionalized version, so they're not personally threatened. But I've found my books all have some sort of current social thread in them.
I think that's so important. Each of my 3, and I started out only planning to write one as part of my, something I wanted to do on my bucket list. We've now had the trilogy. Whether there'll be a 4th or not, I don't know. I'm compiling a lot of research and information now, and we'll see where that goes. But people, for instance, the first one was involved in the water shortage, and I published it a year before the news really hit. Mm-hmm. The second one was about foreigners buying up basically Native American lands in this country, and also that's something that legislatures have jumped in and tried to stop. And of course, this one on book banning. So I think it's really important. And I think people will read a novel about a social issue much faster than they will read documentary material.
Well, I think they'll not only read it faster, but I think they'll discuss it more openly. I think they'll discuss it because, at least this is my perspective, is that we write fiction. And so they're not threatened by the characters as if you and I got into, assuming we were on opposite sides of a political issue, and you and I got into face-to-face debate, at least in today's society, the first thing that happens is the hackles come up and, it becomes ugly pretty quickly usually. You can talk about the same issue in a fictional setting by discussing what's in a book and discussing the issues in it without that same sort of tension, that conflict between people.
And hopefully it'll help resolve some of those conflicts.
Well, I think anytime you can get some discussion on them, it's a good thing. And anytime we can sit down and talk with people who have different viewpoint than we do and talk about it without it becoming hostile, I think is the way we're going to fix this dichotomy that we're in right now in this country that seems to be so concise and so drastic.
We've become so partisan. It's really...
Yeah, it worries me. I look back at history. I, like you, am a student of history, and I look back, and the only other time I can, other than the very beginning of the country, but the only other time I can see this country being as partisan as it is now was just before the Civil War.
I just wrote an article, which I think is going to be out next month for a local publication, called "It's Not the Economy, It's the Democracy, Stupid."
Yeah.
And really, that's what really worries me, what's worried me about this last election. And yes, the economy is a problem. And obviously the economy, I think, is what turned this last election. But the attack on our democracy and the foundations and our founding and our Constitution and the Bill of Rights and free speech really frighten me.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Now, we only have a minute left, so what are you working on for the next book, other than the 5 authors?
The next book, I've got pieces of 3 that I'm working on. The one I went to, 2 of them are paranormal thrillers. My very first book was a paranormal thriller. It was called Cloud Warriors. I'm working on this book in Galena. Galena, Illinois is an interesting place. It was Ulysses S. Grant's home, and it had 9 generals for the Union Army in the Civil War. Came out of Galena, a town of about, at that time, maybe 6,000 people.
And that's a paranormal?
It's a paranormal one.
We're really running down on our time. So
it's either that one or another paranormal one that's set in Ireland.
And we're talking with Rob Jung. We could go on for ever and ever, but unfortunately, time does not permit. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming in, especially as an emergency guest at the last minute here.
Alan, I will always make sure that I can move anything on my calendar if you need me to come and have a chat with you, because it's so delightful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.